Yep. Beautiful day to learn.
By the way, what do you think of my hair? Foster kid did it for me. Says it looks like a visco girl.
Shutter speed. Shutter speed is how long the camera is physically open, or that lens is physically open for the camera to capture light. Okay? So it's a physical time that that lens is open for. By the way, bad crop. Bad crop. Just saying. So since shutter speed is a physical time that shutter is open, it is measured in a physical time. Right? Makes it easy for us. So when you're looking on your camera settings, you're going to see a measurement of time. So 1/64th is 1/64th of a second. 1/50th is 1/50th of a second. 1/6400th is 1/6400th of a second. 1 second, 1 second. 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, etc. All the way up until you get to the bulb setting. Bulb means that your camera is going to be open for as long as you are holding that shutter open for. You physically are deciding how long that is open for. Okay? So the shutter speeds range from bulb, as long as you hold it open for, and then some cameras have like a 30-second, 10-second, 5-second, 4, 3, 2, 1, a sixth of a second, a half a second, and then it starts getting into the fractions. Okay, so when it comes to the fractions, remember that the larger the number is on the bottom, the shorter amount of time is actually happening, right? So 1/10,000th of a second is so fast that we can't even fathom how fast that is. Right? A hummingbird flaps at about 100 times a second. A gnat flaps its wings at about 1,000 times a second. Our brain can't even realize how fast that is, but our camera can. So 1/6400th of a second is a tiny amount of time, like whoosh, 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 right? Whereas a smaller number on the bottom, like 1/2000th of a second, whoosh, is not as fast. 1/1000th of a second, whoosh, not as fast. Still super freaking fast. I mean, I don't think you guys realize how fast that actually is. But a lot of times, that's the adequate amount of time that is needed for a picture to be exposed, for the correct amount of light to be exposed. So now how do we use it?
Huh? What? I, I don't know. Go away. Go away.
The faster the shutter, meaning the shorter amount of time that it is open and closed, is really good for really, really, really bright situations because we don't need as much light to come into there. But it's also used primarily for action photography, sports photography. So right around that 1/200th to 1/500th of a second is a good time to capture a hummingbird pausing its wings. You'll be able to capture that wing being stopped. 1/2000th is usually when you capture sports photography in the middle of the day, when you want that action shot to be really crisp. There's no movement in the piece. Everything is completely still. Like, probably not the best face to make, but whatever. Um, and then as you slowly decrease your time, you're going to start to see motion blur. That is where, like around 1/5 of a second, you're going to start to see when you're taking pictures of waterfalls that the water is not looking like water. It looks more like silk or milk that is being poured. That's a horrible reference. You're going to be able to see the motion of your piece. Okay, so take a look at some examples. This piece was taken with a very fast shutter speed. So you can see that everything is stopped. It's frozen in time. Whereas a piece like this, I was able to capture more light and I was able to capture more movement in the piece. As I was referencing, the shorter amount of time that the shutter is open, the less amount of light that comes in. So really, really bright situations need less light to come into the camera. Whereas low light situations, you're going to need more light to come into that camera to create a proper exposure. Okay? So as the environment gets darker and darker and darker, you're going to need a longer and longer and longer shutter speed. When you're taking night photography, that's when you're going to have to start getting into those low fractions of a second, like 1/10, 1/5, 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You're doing astrophotography, meaning you want to capture the sky legitimately moving, the stars actually moving, 30 seconds to a minute to 30 minutes. If you want to capture light painting looks like this. Light painting is where you are physically moving a light around your composition as that shutter is open to capture the light moving through your composition. Light streaks, light trails, etc. This is a really fun thing to do at nighttime or dusk time near roads, because you'll be able to capture the lights of the cars moving by. And realistically, you won't actually be able to see the car, but you'll be able to see the lights of the car moving through your piece. Like this. Say you're taking a picture of the Milky Way in complete pitch black. So a new moon. Bright stars, bright Milky Way, or you want to capture that, we're going to need a much longer exposure. Like this. This was an exposure that took me 5 minutes. Okay, so I sat there with a timer holding that shutter open for 5 minutes to capture this image. So now for another complication. Our hands shake, right? No matter how still you think you are, we're shaking, right? So a general rule of thumb for this is that anything below or longer than 1/80th of a second, you're going to need a tripod. Or to post your arm up on something as you're taking the photograph. Or to post a leg, and then an arm, and then take the shot. Mostly a tripod works the best. So this is to reduce camera shake. What that means is when you are trying to take a photograph with a longer exposure, you're going to have more of a chance of you physically shaking the camera, which is going to blur your image. Now you can use this to your advantage, like this one, or this one. So in these photographs, I have physically moved the camera to create light moving. Here's another example, a very simple one of somebody moving. Okay? You can see here, with a fast shutter speed, frozen in time. Slow shutter speed. You can see the movement. Really long shutter speed. Ghostly type images. Use this information to your advantage. Okay? Decide what you are trying to capture. What mood are you trying to evoke? What are you trying to narrate? What is the story here? What is the point of this picture? Use that to your advantage. Okay, so to recap. Shutter speed, how long something is open and closing for. How much light is allowed to get into your camera. The larger the number on the bottom of your fraction, the shorter amount of time that it is open. 1/6400th, whoosh. 1/100th, whoosh. 1/10th, whoosh. 1 second, whoosh. 5 seconds. You ready for it? all the way until you hold that shutter down as long as you want. And what's that called? You're correct, Mr. Owl. It's bulb.
Leave me alone.